SBMM, Warzone, and bot lobbies. Today, you guys are going to get the full story of what's going on, why there are so many problems in the world of Warzone right now relating to SBMM and bot lobbies, and basically every shred of information I have found from relatively extensive testing, including how to circumvent SBMM. I've spent the past couple of days learning about the situation regarding skill-based matchmaking and learning the behaviors of the matchmaking algorithm in Warzone using a website called SBMMwarzone.com, which allows you to view your lobbies, how intense they are, and how crazy and skill-based matchmaking based they have become. Using this information, I have been able to establish a baseline for how SBMM operates in Warzone and how the evidence from this points towards really bad behaviors and behaviors that could cripple the game and definitely ruin it in the future. I've also used one of the numerous methods to circumvent skill-based matchmaking in this to show you guys the difference between how SBMM is supposed to behave and how SBMM behaves when it's being deliberately circumvented through some of the various methods available. I've done my best to approach this with the most scientific basis and conclusive basis of evidence, and I would say that most of the results you're about to see here are in the region of 90 to 100% accurate. There will 100% always be some outliers, and I want to preface this video by saying that I'm not going after any Call of Duty pros here. I'm not naming names, I'm not shaming streamers, I'm not saying that certain records aren't legitimate or are legitimate, and I'm not saying that the competitive scene should be completely thrown under the bus. I'm not saying that all the entire professional/streamer scene of Warzone is filled with incredibly talented players. I'm just presenting the evidence that I have found through these testings. I also want to preface this video by saying that I will not be showing you the specific methods of how to circumvent skill-based matchmaking, except for the ones that are publicly and obviously available and are available for either something that Activision actively provides themselves or is something that is available as public information. There are some methods that do require specific softwares, specific hardwares, specific ways of getting around things, and these are the ones I'm not going to be talking about. And you're probably wondering, well, why am I doing that? And I'm not doing this to take some moral high ground or to say, that I'm protecting people or protecting somebody. The problem with this is that I don't think that these ways of circumvention can be solved. I don't think Activision can fix it. I don't think Raven Software, Infinity Ward, or anyone in between can fix it. And the lack of confidence I have in that means that if I do reveal some of these methods, fundamentally, a lot of players will suffer. And what I mean by that is that if everybody is circumventing SBMM, there are lots of players who just like to finish work, finish their 9-to-5 job, come home and play a game where perhaps they're not the highest skilled player. And I don't want them being dunked on every single round by the vast majority of players in Warzone, because that's not fair. And I do fundamentally believe that despite the evidence I'm going to show you today about the flaws of SBMM and why it's creating all of these problems, that it still should exist in some capacity to allow players to actually have an enjoyable experience. Most arguments against skill-based matchmaking and most people who are using bot lobbies and stuff are a small minority of the player base. I'm talking less than 1% of the player base. And there's no reason why this video today should ruin this for the vast majority of players. That being said though, I'm going to explain why some of these complaints about skill-based matchmaking are 100% valid from the evidence that I've seen. And just to double mention here, this video contains evidence from SBMMwarzone.com. This is a legitimate website which is using information from the Activision and Call of Duty Warzone API to pull information about your lobbies from the game. There's nothing sketchy about that, it's a really useful website, and I highly recommend you check it out in the link in the description below. I'll be using some of the statistics from these lobbies to explain certain behaviors that SBMM is prompting, and I'll also be using it to show you an A and B, or a sort of what it's like with SBMM enabled and what it's like with SBMM being actively prevented and circumvented by various different methods. Some of these methods, again, I will tell you because they are publicly available. Some of them I won't because it's going to mess up the game for a lot of people. I'm also operating under the presumption that eventually most people are going to learn about how to circumvent SBMM, and that is going to have catastrophic impacts on a vast majority of the player base. So let's dive into everything that's going on here. So I am a sort of diamond level player. I have a career KD of 2.76 and technically higher if you take away things like leveling up weapons in plunder or, you know, randomly playing solo games to check things out for footage. And I've had weekly KDs in and around the region of sort of 4 to 6. The evidence from this video today is me playing with the same person. I'm playing with Benny Central, who is a former Call of Duty pro and a fantastic YouTube content creator. Really recommend you check out his stuff. But he's really talented, one of the best in the game in my opinion, and plays incredibly aggressively. He has an average kill of 10 per game and a really high KD as well. I also played a few rounds with people like Broken Machine and Westy, also very talented players. From these gameplays, I took a baseline, and the baseline is effectively talking about how SBMM actually operates within a couple of hours. This was about a 4 to 5 hour session, which is around about the average time I would say for a streamer, but also probably in and around the region of somebody who really plays the game often, or I don't know, somebody who's got all their mates online on Warzone one night and they finished work and they just want to play for a couple hours. From a result of 15 different lobbies, we found that we were in 11 diamond lobbies, including multiple top 1% games, and also in 4 gold lobbies. And on screen, you can see the average KD requirement in order to get into the various different tiers of lobbies. Diamond came up most of the time, again, 11 out of 15, with high level to medium level golds the rest of the time for our entire play session. The next segment you're about to see is what we did when we actually circumvented skill-based matchmaking using one of the available methods. And to be honest with you, the results speak for themselves and the consistencies of lobbies are completely different. With zero circumvention, we found 11 diamonds and 4 golds, and with some circumvention, you can see that this gets even crazier. We're basically in lobbies that we shouldn't be in because we're too high skilled to be in them in the first place. Now, before I dive into the methods that were available and the methods that I can't talk about as well, I want to talk about some of the behaviors we see from the first segment of games, which are all of the diamond games and all of the gold games. And all of these point towards fundamental flaws with skill-based matchmaking that will lead to the demise of Warzone. And it's worth remembering that these issues won't necessarily just affect diamond players. Even if you're somebody who is in a silver, a gold, or a bronze, skill-based matchmaking will be applying equally in a similar standard to you, meaning that you will have the same consistency of high skill lobbies even at a lower skill level. For example, if you're a silver 3 player, chances are you're going to end up playing more silver 1s and gold 3s than you will end up playing in bronze lobbies. So these problems are entirely scalable across the spectrum, and these issues will affect everyone. I'm definitely saying for sure though, the diamonds and golds will feel it a lot more. So for starters, the first main issue that I noticed immediately off the bat was the lack of balancing regarding skill-based matchmaking. In numerous of the lobbies I played with Benny, we actually took a few random fills, and these guys had KD ratios and skill ratings which simply weren't reasonable for them to even exist in our lobbies. My theory for this is that the amalgamation of both mine and Benny's KD and MMR rating and overall skill status is that they would throw somebody in of a much lower skill level to give an overall average of our team that was deemed to be acceptable. Now this is a huge failure for 2 reasons. Number 1, it means that somebody who is of a low skill level is being dragged into trios which are way too high for them to even compete in. These guys have really low average career KDs and are basically getting completely deleted. Now, the methodology could be arguing that they think that we're going to carry them to a specific win, but I would argue the opposite. Most likely these guys aren't actually going to get a lot of teamwork out of random fill trios, and they're not going to get a lot of help generally speaking, and chances are they're going to have a terrible experience, as most of our fills did, getting completely dunked on and then quitting the game. And it's also entirely unbalanced from the other team's perspective, or the overarching team perspective, because effectively in most of these games, the game was relying on me and Benny. It was effectively saying that the 2 of us alone is perfectly good enough, and good luck to us. We would have a third person who would effectively be a liability, thus meaning we would lose more games. Now you're probably thinking, oh boo-hoo, you lost another diamond lobby, but this actually has a bigger implication here. This severe level of unbalanced lobbies, the severe level of just pure messing with individual teams, means that you have people who effectively can't play with their friends. And again, I state that this is a scalable problem for everybody from diamond to bronze based on their skill rating. And let me give you an example. I'm roughly a diamond 1 player, sometimes anywhere in the scale of diamond generally speaking. If I want to play with my friends who aren't YouTubers or streamers, my friends from university, my friends from home, whatever that happens to be, who play the game casually after their work day or whatever it happens to be, I basically can't. I can't because we can't have a good experience. The second I am within their lobby, it means that the overall matchmaking rank of our team gets dragged through the ceiling, and Warzone would rather put those guys in a diamond lobby and let them suffer than put me in a silver lobby and let me pop off. And sure, that kind of makes sense and there's a method to the madness, but you're basically banning people from playing with players who are of a lower skill to themselves. A bit like how in Rainbow Six Siege, if you have an entire team of diamonds and you have a bronze or a silver put in your team, or you have, a much lower ranked player put in your team, the entire lobby and overarching standard of the game has been completely lopsided, because it means that you already have a player and a team that is at an inherent disadvantage, and it also means that if you're a diamond player playing ranked in Rainbow Six Siege, that you probably can't play with your friends who are gold or silver. The only difference is that in Siege, you can go play casual together, which has a much less strict SBMM basis. So we have unbalanced teams, we have random lower skill players effectively being punished for playing, and we have the inability of people who are higher and lower level different skills to actually play with each other and have a reasonable experience. Another common trend with skill-based matchmaking is that Warzone would rather you played in a high ping lobby over getting people of a lower matchmaking rank, which means that they would quite literally rather degrade the standard of your game and mean you have less better networking, you have issues with hit registration, and possibly face players out of region, which leads to more networking issues such as peaking and ping advantages, then just simply let you play in your own region, your own area with a low ping, in a lobby that might not necessarily be as good as you are. Now let's talk about circumvention. Why this is happening, what's happening, how it's happening, and some of the methods available to you. And also why this also poses a massive issue for Warzone for a vast majority of the player base, not just the top percentage or the lowest percentage, but for basically everyone. Now again, when we circumvented these lobbies using a method that I can't exactly disclose, we got incredibly easy lobbies. It probably would have led to statistically more wins if it wasn't for the RNG nature of playing a battle royale. And what it also means as well is that new players or lower skill players were getting completely defeated by people much better than them. It means that they're just getting completely destroyed by meta guns, they're getting completely destroyed by people who have, way more hours and way more wins in the game. And for a brand new player or somebody who is, a casual player of the game, that doesn't equate to a good experience. And it likely means that they will quit the game, rage quit, turn off the game, play a different game, and that could lead to a lower declining player base in Call of Duty Warzone. It also poses problems for things like competitive kill races or, people winning tournaments, and also just generally speaking, the overall standard of the game. There are a lot of people out there who claim to be really good at the game or in the top 100 or whatever it so happens to be, but the simple fact of the matter is that all of those lists now basically have no legitimacy. And again, I'm not coming for names here, I'm not pointing fingers, and I'm not saying some people are and some people aren't at all. What I'm saying here is that the evidence shows very clearly that circumvention allows you to get lobbies you 100% shouldn't get. As somebody with a 2.73 career KD and Benny Central with a 3.45 career KD, we played in 11 diamond lobbies and 4 high-level gold lobbies out of 15 games, the way SBMM was designed to work. Did we have a terrible experience and not a great time? Yes. Did it mean that lots of players didn't get dunked on? Also yes. And through this method that we used, circumvention was very easy, very clear, very obvious, and we got easy lobbies day in and day out. So let's start talking about these methods, and how do they work, and what is the methodology behind them. Again, I can't talk about some of them here because they would just affect the health of the game overall, and I like Warzone, and I don't want that to happen. But there are 2 methods that are publicly available and actively provided to you by Activision. But first, let's talk about the methodology of how these methods work, and all of them work generally speaking. SBMM works by having a matchmaking rank for individual players and also teams collectively, an average MMR. MMR is calculated on skill, percentage of wins, headshot accuracy, KD ratio, anything that can be considered to be a skillful statistic is accounted for in an MMR. In an ideal scenario, the game will take your MMR, or the average MMR of your team, and search for people within your region who have a similar MMR. It actually prioritizes the similarity of MMR over your region and over your ping, because it would rather that you had an experience that was fair and balanced for the entire population of the game than you having a good experience network speaking. With a game like Warzone with millions of players, chances are it's pretty easy for them to pluck people into your lobby and form a 150 player lobby, which is a diamond lobby, a gold lobby, or whatever it happens to be. So what's the methodology and how do people get around all of this? The methodology is simple. You just have to put as many hurdles as humanly possible in front of skill-based matchmaking so that it prioritizes dumping you in a random lobby of a random skill over having you in a lobby that is fair and balanced for the entire population of the game. At the end of the day, Warzone still has to put you into a game, whether that takes 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or whatever it so happens to be. And the more restrictions you impose on the matchmaking process, the harder it is for the SBMM calculations and algorithm to get you into a game that allows it to be fair and balanced. So the most obvious answer is to reduce the available population of the game as much as humanly possible. Now there is one way you can actively do this already, and another way that you can kind of monitor it. For example, if you're on PlayStation, you can disable crossplay. And what that means is that you're wiping out 2/3 of the entire game's population. Now chances are, there are so many people on PlayStation that the game probably still won't struggle that much in order to find you a lobby. But the overall variance that introduces is enough to make SBMM shudder a little bit and make it move. If you're on PlayStation and you disable crossplay, the simple fact of the matter is 2/3 of the entire game's population is gone, and you have circumvented SBMM to some degree, which is why the game puts so many warnings of the way of you doing this, because it knows that it messes with its own matchmaking process. The next way to monitor this is the publicly available overlay from Overwolf, which is available on PC, which allows you to see the overall KDR of your lobby and the overall skill of your lobby, and if it's too high, well, you just simply quit, matchmake again, and hope that the game spits you out in a lower SBMM lobby. Now there are a few other methods, and these methods are sometimes relatively cheaply available, other times very expensively available, and sometimes are just downright silly. I'm sure many of you have seen the video of people using bots as the host of a lobby, like a random level 2 account that they've made, joining on that random level 2 account and then letting that account host the lobby. And that's very obvious because it skews the SBMM hugely. Even if you're a 7 KD player, if the new account that you've just played on is a 0.1 KD, it's going to skew the overall skill of your lobby downwards in order to try and help that player. And in the case of professional players and people who are incredibly good at the game at the diamond level of things, and people who have these random accounts, it means that it skews it so heavily that a diamond 1 player could effectively end up in a bronze or silver lobby. There are a few other methods that I know of. Some of them require software, some of them require purchased hardware. These methods work on the same principle though. They do their best to physically stop the game from reaching a large population of its player base. If it can't reach a large population, it can't get similar MMR players. If it can't get similar MMR players, the game will finally realize and decide that its algorithm simply can't do it and will put you in any random lobby. Reducing the population is so effective that you will find yourself in silver and bronze lobbies, as I've already shown you from some of the evidence on SBMMWarzone.com, where I used one of these methods on PC with a controller that allowed me to reduce the population very severely. And naturally the other methodology, which is the silly one that I already mentioned, is just skewing the SBMM as far down as you humanly can, like, matchmaking with a bot as the host. And the evidence is clear. It means that it makes it so incredibly easy for somebody of an exceedingly high KD to put into a very low lobby. If somebody like myself or Benny Central was put into a silver or bronze lobby, we'd probably rush every single team, completely decimate them, do like 1v3 random engagements, and provided the random nature and RNG of a battle royale doesn't screw us over, it should be a relatively easy victory, or at the bare minimum a high kill count game for us. So what does this problem pose, and why does this circumvention have such an issue, and what issues does it pose for the player base? The simple fact of the matter is that there are already some ways to do it, and the ways that I haven't discussed in this video today for reasons of trying not to hurt the game, will eventually be public. And this points to a number of issues with the game that will lead to a decline in player base for Warzone over time. The first major and most obvious issue is that there are players running around with exceedingly high KDs, dumping on people who are in bronze and silver lobbies. They've found ways to effectively circumvent skill-based matchmaking, and are basically ruining the experience for a large number of players. And under the presumption that these methods end up becoming more and more publicly available, it means that more and more large cross-sections of the player base are going to have their experience ruined. Number 2, it means that professional kill races and professional lobbies that aim to be competitive in nature are completely invalid, because unless your terms of services specifically specify ways against these methods, or have it written in their terms of services that there must be evidence that you are not doing these things, then it's very easy for somebody to win these tournaments dead out. If I were to take a PlayStation 5 professional player who was really good at the game and put him in EU lobbies where it's a peak time of day, so he's playing against lots of people who are of a similar skill rating to him, he's going to get way less kills than somebody who is trying to reduce the population of the game or negatively skew the overall SBMM of his lobby. And it means that they will get much easier lobbies and higher kills, which completely throws the entire competitive scene into disarray. And I have it under relatively good knowledge that most of these tournaments don't actually have any terms of services against these practices. Another major issue is that this is all happening in the first place because SBMM is so incredibly strict that players who are in the top 10 to 15, 20% of the game feel so broken by the game, so dumbed down by the game, so alienated by the game, that they're actively looking for ways to circumvent SBMM, even if it costs them hundreds of pounds or dollars to do so. And in my opinion, that's a concept problem with the game. Warzone is in itself an RNG, random, battle royale experience, and if you have an exceedingly strict SBMM in a game which has RNG in it and random various outcomes in it, as well as a game that has broken weapons and metas sometimes, you're basically completely degrading and dissolving the people who play your game regularly over time. Imagine the number of streamers or the number of players who play this game actively, frequently, who are tired of DMRs, who are tired of randomly being killed out in the open by DMRs. These are the people who are often looking to circumvent SBMM and are having such a terrible experience that they just simply don't want to be in these lobbies anymore. And I guess overall that's the main issue: alienation. It means that new players and low skill players are getting completely dunked on by high skill players, and it means that it's happening relatively frequently and possibly more frequently in the future that these players either won't pick up the game again or won't play it in the first place. And it also means that even some of the higher skill players are being alienated to the extent that they feel the need to look for these circumventions. And again, this problem is scalable. There are people who are in gold and silver who are thinking, damn, I just got dunked on in gold and silver by other gold and silver players who are also feeling the same level of fatigue. And that points to the main issue here. Skill-based matchmaking in Call of Duty Warzone offers you zero reward for maximum effort. The game makes you sweat. It makes you play every game as though you are a CDL pro based on your different skill bracket. Even if you're a silver player, you have to play at the top of your game, and you have to have people in your party or who are of a similar caliber to you, otherwise you will get dunked on by skill-based matchmaking. In the lobbies where it was just me and Benny Central with a random fill, the game would drag us down. It would ruin the fill's experience, it would do its best to make sure the lobby was fair and balanced to some degree, but at the same time, it meant that we couldn't play with friends who were of a lower skill caliber, and people who are in gold can't play with bronze, and people who are in silver can't play with bronze, people who are in silver can't play with diamonds. Because the caliber of experience would ramp up and down so variably that it would just make the experience terrible for them. And I guess the simple solution in my eyes is that if you're going to make people play as sweatily and aggressively as they probably can, reward them for it, or at least offer a separate playlist with less strict SBMM in the first place. I think most professional players and streamers and high caliber players wouldn't mind skill-based matchmaking if they had a rank, and if they had a rank that improved over time or went down over time based on their performances in-game, and maybe they were given specific camos or badges or anything else in-game to reward them for reaching those ranks on a seasonal basis. Exactly how games like Rainbow Six Siege and CSGO have been operating for years. And then offer a casual playlist so that people can just sit back and relax sometimes. And sometimes, yeah, they'll get dunked on, but other times they'll be playing with their friends and they'll just be generally having a good time because the experience isn't so incredibly harsh every single time that they play. Because at the moment in Warzone, when you combine the fact that we have people circumventing SBMM, we have people who can't circumvent SBMM and being pushed in very hard lobbies. You have people who can't play with friends. You have people who feel like they're being dunked on in lobbies because people who are higher skill are getting into those lobbies when they shouldn't be. And you have people who are getting high ping experiences because they can't find similar MMR players, so they match them out of region or in a different server. And overarchingly, what this all equates to is what I call burnout. There will be a burnout of Warzone. There will be players who are new to the game who won't come back. There'll be players who've been playing the game for ages who won't be willing to come back. The player count since the DMR 14 I can only imagine has probably fallen through the floor, which is why the initial nerf that they did, which wasn't really a nerf, is something that came rapidly because their data supported that issue. And the strictness and the pure insanity of SBMM is another issue that is going to lead to a data-based fallout of players, because these methods will become publicly available, and more people will be using them in-game to circumvent SBMM, and the effects this has on the player base could be catastrophic. I've shown you guys how SBMM is supposed to work, and how it basically grinds you down to a powder if you're a reasonably good player. And again, if you're a reasonably good player in a silver-based category or a bronze-based category, the same principle is applying to you as well. Even if you aren't necessarily one of the top 1% players in the world, you're still being matched against people of an equal caliber or slightly higher caliber than you, and in many ways that's the same principle. So the issue of zero reward, maximum effort, the issues that come from circumvention, the issues that come from how SBMM handles specific lobbies, team balancing, MMR balancing, and the issues of alienation of new players, current players, and heavily active players, and the fact that high ping experiences may become common, leads to one simple thing: burnout. And if SBMM isn't addressed with a ranked and casual playlist, or some other amalgamation of something that resembles a result that changes the way things are operating in game, or some serious fixes and anti-cheats are applied to stop people circumventing it in the first place, then this game is walking down a very dangerous path that may massively affect the player base in future. Without rewarding players for making them play at their best possible versions of themselves, and without addressing some of these issues and fixing some of these possible exploits, Warzone could end up in a very bad place. I want to have a final note, and again, I've tried my best to talk about issues that affect the entire player base here. Because obviously that's what's important and that's the grand picture of things. But there are also some things that affect a smaller player base of things, and people who are streamers and content creators and people who play the game regularly. For example, you're probably watching a streamer who's getting dunked on 8 times in a row because he's in Diamond 1 lobbies, and then there might be another streamer who is exploiting one of these issues and has 5 silver lobbies or 3 bronzes and 2 silvers and has a 5 or 6 KD. And it means that that person who is getting absolutely dunked on is less respected, isn't invited to some of these competitive tournaments, and in many ways isn't receiving the viewer numbers because their gameplay isn't as exciting, while somebody who is very obviously exploiting these issues is dropping huge KD bombs, having the time of their lives, posting all of it on YouTube and Twitch, and it actually changes the perception of the game. People think that they can do these things, when the simple fact of the matter is that they can't, because the game won't allow them to drop a 30 bomb. And again, I can only reiterate the issues that this causes with the competitive format as well. Now, I'm not saying that your favorite streamer or every YouTuber or every competitive player in the world is absolutely doing these things, and I'm not pointing fingers at anyone here. And if you think about the methodology of population reduction, streamers who stream early in the morning, or streamers who stream just on controller and avoid keyboard and mouse because, of course, Call of Duty Warzone has input-based matchmaking, are in a way circumventing the SBMM in totally legitimate ways. And chances are many of them aren't doing that consciously. They might just stream in the morning because it suits their day and they want to finish their, streaming schedule by the time somebody else or their partner or whatever finishes their regular job. Or because their friends are online in the morning because they might be in a slightly different region. Messing around with input-based matchmaking and reducing population and playing with friends who are of a lower skill are certainly ways to legitimately reduce the effect of SBMM, but it doesn't necessarily mean that all of them are using some mad exploit that costs loads of money to do. Or really cheap and easy exploits either. So yeah, I just wanted to drop a note on that. And this issue actually gets even more difficult for people who are playing on PC as well. Because for example, in Europe, if you use a keyboard and mouse, you are facing a high percentage of hackers on a regular basis, especially if you're looking at sort of the top 10 to 20% of players. So many of these players may legitimately be looking to matchmake out of region, not because they want to reduce the population count of their game, but simply because they are sick of playing hackers, and really, who can blame them for that? So that is the full picture of skill-based matchmaking in Warzone, all of the issues that it's presenting, and why some of these issues are big and will come back to bite Warzone. Now, Warzone is thriving on an incredibly high population count and is thriving on a huge amount of publicity by being one of the only active modern shooters and royales with active regular updates, with content drops, and in the middle of a global pandemic of all things, so it's using that player count to do its best to mitigate these problems. But fundamentally, I feel that while some of these issues certainly will only affect the top 10%, things like circumvention, things like the lack of reward for playing Warzone when you're being forced into highly skilled lobbies, and things like the alienation players feel when they're dunked on by a diamond guy who's in a silver lobby, are going to end up affecting the game in a bad way. And in many ways, I hope that this video is seen by somebody who actually works on the game and thinks to themselves, damn, we've got to try and find a way to sort this out. If you enjoyed this video today and this very detailed description of everything that I've done here in SBMM and, you know, everything in between really, and all the testing that it took to get this done, please leave a like, a comment, and a subscribe. It helps the channel. Allow me to fight the SBMM YouTube algorithm that is the YouTube algorithm so more people can see this. But as always, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this content. Leave a like, leave a sub, and I'll catch you again in another video.